This time we have a question about destiny and fate.
All right.
What is the difference between destiny and fate?
Yeah, this is a good question. And it's one that comes up a lot. And I think traditionally we would say that people tend to think of destiny and fate interchangeably, that they're the same thing, in other words. But in fact, they're two different words for a reason. And people think of destiny and fate often as the same thing, but they're not the same thing. And they're two different words because they're two different processes. I think that most people, or probably the majority of people, have this question in their mind. They may not think of it out loud. They may not be very conscious of it. A lot of people are. A lot of people probably not. But it's tied to an existential question, which is, why am I here? Why do I exist? And I think whether people consciously ask themselves that question or not, they certainly have that deeper yearning to know about their existence. And so when we say destiny, we're talking about an idea that's based on a certain construct of how the universe works. So destiny has to do with the idea that we're here for some reason, that we're not an accident. It didn't just come about because our parents had sex one day and then boom, here we are. Rather, that there is some type of purpose and plan in our actual existence. Now, everybody may not believe that. They may not have that as a part of their philosophy of life. But now the term, where the term came from, was from people who did have that philosophy of life, that things aren't just happening. It's not haphazard. That there's some law in effect, and there's some reasons in effect that determine how and why and when and under what conditions do we get to come here, as human beings on this earth. And so, given that there is some purpose, whether we're aware of it or not, destiny has to do with the degree to which we are moving in our lives towards establishing, living out, and fulfilling that purpose, whatever that purpose is. However, as we all know, life on earth is complicated and oftentimes unpredictable, and the environment can be very hostile. Different things can happen. And so therefore, there may be many reasons why we are separated from our actual purpose, our actual reason for being here. So this is where the term fate comes in. And fate is partially determined by circumstance and context. And then fate is partially determined by the decisions that we make. So let's look at it in a simple way like this. If my destiny is to leave my house and to go down to the corner store to pick up a loaf of bread, if I do that, I have fulfilled my destiny. And generally speaking, that wouldn't necessarily be a hard task. However, if I leave my house and I'm headed down to the corner store, I get down to the store and then there's a shootout happening, which is beyond my ability to do anything about. I might forfeit going to the store, and therefore my destiny has been altered. In other words, here's a situation where fate is introduced as a context outside my control. Now, I still have control as to whether I'm going to go to that store. I can go later, or maybe I can decide not to go at all. Maybe I've now determined that that store is too dangerous for me to go to ever. The decision that I make in the context of what is happening is what my fate is. So destiny is where we're supposed to go based on why we're here. And fate is what we actually end up doing, where we actually end up going based on context and the decisions that we make. So destiny is one of those elusive existential questions that unfortunately in this society we don't really focus on that, and so it comes out through usually through family training, family learning. And of course, one of the issues for many people, especially in this part of the world, African American people, Native American people, is that destiny is an idea that we may be very, very dislocated from because of what happened in terms of our fate. In other words, the context has changed. Where our destiny may have begun, the context may make it very difficult for us to carry out our mission. The other part of this is also tied back to what does it mean to be a human being and born into a family? Because a family is a group of people with a related destiny. That's why you're in the family. And also, this related destiny is going to be tied across generations. We'll see, for example, conversations about astrology and your sun sign, your moon sign, and how when you were born, you have certain characteristics and certain things are going to happen we call gateways, places to go through to get to where you're supposed to get to, that are pretty much predestined. It doesn't mean that your destiny is necessarily going to be affected by it, but that it's a high potential because this is your fate to be born at a certain time, under a certain sign, under certain conditions, etc. Our destinies are tied to other people. It's not just our destiny. So I was saying how, like in my situation, I had these different ideas about what I thought I wanted to do and why. One thing I said as a young person is that I wasn't going to be a teacher, but I came from a family of teachers, generations of teachers and musicians. Now, I am a musician and I continue to follow doing music, but I wasn't intending on being a teacher. However, later in my life, when I really had to question, what am I doing? You know, I went to grad school and I got a degree. I got a few degrees, you know, in psychology. And after I finished, I really had to ask myself now, well, what's the point? You know, why do I have these degrees? And what is my purpose within the idea of getting these degrees? I became a university professor. And then after I became a university professor, I ended up opening my own school. And then I ended up teaching all grades, history and music. And so I became a teacher by default, if you will. But the point is, now I'm still a teacher, a different type of teacher. But it's what I was supposed to be doing. It's what I came to do. And so it's partly an expression of the fact that I came through a family that was preparing me. I didn't know I was being prepared for this, but they were preparing me because it is our destiny as a family, not just me as a person. And oftentimes people don't realize, especially again when fate interferes, and then because of context, people don't see the family connection. They may even be disconnected from their family. Maybe they have one parent that passes early, or maybe their parents divorce, or they get disconnected from grandparents or whatever. And so they don't even realize that their destiny is tied to a group. It's not just their personal destiny. So this is where fate, conditions, and decisions intersect with destiny, biological, DNA, philosophy, and ultimately spiritual purpose. They intersect. I think it's important for all of us to understand this, and then to really look within ourselves, within our life space, and make sure that we're very clear. First of all, what is my purpose? Why am I here? What am I here to do? And then, given that, how do I go about developing myself so that I can live up to this purpose and make the proper decisions given the context, and oftentimes, yes, different conflicts and or obstacles that seem to impede progress as they come. How I have to negotiate around these obstacles so that I continue on this road to my destiny, which is my reason for being here. And the outcome of fulfilling one's destiny is, first of all, what we would call a fulfillment in life, that you actually realize your spiritual nature. You live out the spiritual nature, and the result of that, you have a sense of fulfillment for your time being in this space. The other part of it is increasing the value within your family system, which then ultimately means increasing literally the survival of your DNA. And ultimately, survival of your DNA is the number one rule and law of life.